Welcome, everyone. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning. Welcome to Facebook Live. I had to look at the date. Today's the 15th of March, year 2023. Welcome, everyone. I hope everyone is doing fantastically well and having a good time. Hopefully, winter is getting better and better for everyone. We are having weird weather here in Texas. Sometimes it's 80 degrees, the next day is 50 degrees. So it's unusual weather. Let me introduce you. No introductions required. I'll just quickly go through our panel. We have April, who's a psychic and has done quite a few therapies or modalities of healing. Good evening, April. Good to have you. And then we have Ken with us, who's part of a core group of meditators. And then we have Patricia here, who is also part of a core group of meditators. So I'll ask April the question that I have prepared. And then we won't talk about bloodlines, Patricia. Here we go. How do you remain present when you are the sole caregiver of elderly 80 plus parents? Every day is challenging. I try my best to just be present when they go on and on, complaining or repeating things. How does one remain present when you are emotionally and physically exhausted? And I'll go tag everyone as well. Thank you.
Okay. Let me re-look at this. How do you stay emotionally present with people complaining?
80, I'm caring.
80 some. Yeah.
And I'm taking care of elderly 80 plus parents.
Mm-hmm. So staying present, one of the big aspects of staying present is, well, there's a couple big aspects, but one of them is not having expectations. It's practicing acceptance. It's not having expectations. It's also understanding where people are at, which is part of expectations and acceptance, especially if these people are 80 plus years old. Most people, like when I watched, it was my ex-husband's grandmother. She was elderly, and what I noticed is when you get older, their world kind of gets smaller. Unless they are somebody who, wants to keep learning and learning and learning. For most of them, their world gets smaller almost. And a lot of us get stuck in a certain time frame. And we certainly get where we think that was the best time frame. Maybe it was the 50s, or maybe it was the 70s or 80s. That's the best time frame. So the world in a sense gets smaller, and they don't necessarily keep up with the world is changing so fast. I can even look at my own life where there were no cell phones. The biggest thing that came out was beepers. And we were so excited, right? Do you remember beepers? So then we did get cell phones, but once you got a cell phone, then you had to learn the technology, and you had to learn how to text. And now you have to learn how to text and send pictures and send files. And a lot of them, their world is not that expanded. So it's having a level of compassion and understanding and love, and not having the expectation that they're going to understand, that they're going to think like you, understanding their worldview. So if they came from families where complaining was a norm, or they came from a time era where this is what people did, I meet many people where it's in their families to, watch the news and yell at the news and get mad at the news. I have a grandfather who constantly yells at the news and constantly yells at the football game. And I remember my grandmother would always yell back and say, "It can't hear you. It can't, it can't hear you." But he would yell and yell and yell. They get so upset by the things that they see or the things they hear or the things they know, or even old things that happened to them in their past. They're stuck there. There's some things in life that they're such big events or traumatic events that a person will get stuck there. So when you understand that, then you can basically love them, you can have compassion for them, but you're not attached to what they're saying and you're not expecting different. You can try. Eckhart talks about how his parents were like this. And you can try to guide them or, try to calm them down. But mostly because they're programmed this way and this is the way they are and this is where their beliefs lie. And they haven't learned a new way and their world is shrinking. So they're not necessarily able to think or behave in a different way. So what I would do as far as I would watch your story, your own story after their story. Most of our pain and our suffering, I would say almost 100% of the time, it's not the event. It's the story attached to the event. It's the belief attached to the event. So if they're complaining and then you're in your mind going, why do I have to deal with this? Oh my gosh, I can't get out. They just won't stop. They won't shut up. Now you're adding to that suffering. So one, I would greet them with acceptance, with where they're at consciously, and then remove expectation that they're going to understand or be different. And then I would watch your own story. That's what I would do.
Thank you so much, April. That was incredible. Thank you for the lesson of surrender. One of the things that you said was know of their pattern of complaining. Is it so if they're 80 years old, they were born probably 20 in 1930 or 1940? So some level of compassion for the era in which they were born, like probably almost Second World War had just.
Well, then we're looking at the 1920s, and we all know that there was, like a depression around that time. And back then, things were much different. Things were much more, this is what I believe, and we're going to stand for what I believe. And, it's simply a different time era. It's good or bad, it doesn't matter. It's a different belief system. And, like my stepdad was very, very much, the Boy Scout, and you do all, and if you follow these rules, this because, and that's the time era he grew up in, and I understand that, and that's okay. He can be in that time era. He can have that mentality. I don't have to have that mentality, but I can, so if this person, if it is like all day, then, perhaps they put an earbud in one ear and they're listening to some classical music or maybe a meditation. Maybe they go to their room for an hour and meditate or decompress to get away too. Because I imagine my grandfather, like he would do this. He would literally all day just talk and complain and yell at the TV. And eventually my grandma just tuned him out. But she'd roll her eyes and, so I would find ways to come back to center, to come back to peace.
And that is the key, right? Like what I feel is because the last sentence said, when you are emotionally and physically exhausted, this person is not giving themselves, like loving themselves. So one of the things I let me look if I can find it. In Nature or Personal Reality, Seth says, if you give up your life for your parents, you you know, it almost seems like that this person has given up their life for their parents, right? So it almost is like they say, I don't have any life for myself. And the part of the depression or the emotional distress is that they're not living their true potential, right? They're just taking care of 80-year-old parents over and over again. And let me see if I can find that line, if I saved it. You can go ahead. I'll look for
Well,
it.
and they're saying here, you know, how does one remain present when you are emotionally and physically exhausted? So that does express that this person, in whatever ways, is, you know, giving too much, and they're the sole caretaker of these parents. So, assumingly, there is nobody else for this person to reach out to. There is no other siblings that are willing, or, you know, whatever. So I
They need to
imagine it could
find,
be physically exhausting.
right, they need to find like somebody in the neighborhood that they are in. Like they need to, I feel like very connected. I don't need family members. Like I've lived in the US all by myself. I don't have any family, right? But I do trust my neighborhood or people around me. Like I always trusted my daycare would, my babysitter would take care of my son, right? Strangers, I could ask for help from strangers, and I felt that they were part of my family. I made them part of my family. I feel this person has isolated themselves with the, I'm going to be the one, that ego has built that identity, that I'm going to be the one that takes care of my 80-year-old parent. And my identity lies into this self-sacrificing. I'm doing such noble work. I'm self-sacrificing my life for these parents. And this is what Seth says in Nature of Personal Reality. He says, usually self-sacrifice means throwing the burden of yourself upon someone else and making it their responsibility. A mother who says to her child, I gave up my life for you, is speaking nonsense. In basic terms, such a mother believes, no matter what she says, that she did not have that much to give up. And the giving up gave her a life that she wanted. Can you believe that? That he wrote that in 1972? A child who says, I gave up my life for my parents and devoted myself to their care means I was afraid to live my own life and afraid to let them live theirs. And so in giving up my life, I gained the life I wanted, which is the life of the caregiving. Love does not demand sacrifice. Those who fear to affirm their own being also fear to let others live for themselves. You do not help your children by keeping them chained to you, but you do not help your aged parents either by encouraging their sense of helplessness. The ordinary sense of communication given you through your creaturehood, if spontaneously and honestly followed, would soon solve many of your problems. Only repressed communication leads to violence. And this chapter is on violence, actually. So that's what this person is feeling, right? Then they're feeling the violent thoughts of, I'm emotionally disturbed.
Well, and as you were reading that, what I thought about is, you know, these 80 some parents who are complaining on and on, which again, I think is very much of their time. One, it's, you know, they're elderly, their thoughts are just coming out, they're just expressing themselves. They're expressing how, you know, if they're complaining, they themselves are not happy. So then it made me think, well, this is probably something that was programmed into her, that you need to take care of me. I'm your parent. Right?
Guilt,
Yeah.
unnatural
So
guilt.
she's already in it. I'm sure she or he, loved them. It's not about love. However, was most likely taught to sacrifice themselves.
Mhm.
And now they get here to this position. They're already exhausted because they've sacrificed their whole life to others, right? Because they don't
Mhm.
have the self-esteem and the self-care and the boundaries and all of that. And now they're stuck because nobody else can,
Mhm.
yeah. So there's a lot of insight that could be gained into that. And it's a lot of uh, self-healing, and then finding a way to, one, regain that balance, and then finding some sort of, even if it's a local church or something, I mean, somebody to come in, even if it's a
Mhm.
couple hours,
Mhm. Perfect. Yeah, rely on others to help you out. Don't get emotionally and physically exhausted, right? If it's exhausting, then just find help around you. Perfect. Incredible. Thank you so much. Grateful to have you back. Ken, did you want to say something about this? Do you have any
Yes, well, I
insights?
think April said a lot, and I agree totally in so many things. The thing coming to me is, don't take things so personally. And I can think of my mother. My mother got up to be 99 years old, and I have 5 brothers. Well, my mother had certain ways about her. And I want to just say my mom and dad were very, very codependent. And they both complained about each other. They were mirrors of each other in so many ways. And my mother used certain personalities from certain brothers to agree with her. When there are others weren't agreeing with her, she would kind of shun you. So, and then as she got older, she couldn't control much of what she was doing. So a lot of stuff would come out in dementia. A lot of things would come out. She would say certain things. Um, and she actually had these, I want to call these slips. And not just my mom, I can see other people in the family, because we take on certain behaviors from our parents. And so I can really start to see that now more than ever. Um, and then, so with my mom, there are some times when she would complain about somebody else. And I could see how it affected me, and I can see how it affected others. So now, understanding all that, being with people, I already recognize that's not my stuff, that's their stuff, and very much try to play with it, try to kid with it. So just don't mirror them with the same feelings or reactions, because all that will do is feed theirs. So you try to be smiley, happy. My mother loved animals. My mother loved looking in the forest. So when I was with her, I would talk about the things that she liked. And if she was getting into this complaining thing, or, start to be a little annoying, I just start talking about things she liked. And I know for myself, I could not take care of somebody like this full time. So I could be with her a couple of hours, and after that, it'd be like, okay. And it's almost like you can't also just agree with everything and realize that their behaviors, their reactions to so many things, they're actually carrying. And when they get older, they get worse. So, in some of those ways, I just don't take it personally. And some things you just let it go in one ear out the other. So, I don't really have an easy answer for this, but it's something where I think it's just a learned lesson to be with your parents, and do it the best you can.
I think it's not only parents, it's even children that may be difficult to raise, right?
Oh, yeah,
It's not
yes.
just like one, this same thing can apply. if you are having a kid that has ADD, and this right now is this period of a lot of children have some kind of affection, they're affected mentally, right? Like either they are diagnosed ADD or ADHD or some kind of disability, right? Which may affect how they behave. They may not behave like a normal kid, what we would call a normal kid. When you were talking about your mother complaining, one other thing came to me, April and Ken, was when you were talking about your mother, especially, I have a feeling. So Eckhart says when we complain, what we are doing is in that moment, in that very moment, by complaining about something, it may be as simple as looking at a bottle of water. I don't like this bottle of water. Why did you buy this bottle of water? I wanted like some different bottle of water. I wanted Fiji. I don't like the shape of this bottle, right? Complaining. That's stupid complaining, right? Stupid kind of complaining. But what I feel, what Eckhart says is in that complaining, in that exact moment, by complaining, we are feeling, our ego is feeling better in self-esteem because we can put something down. We can put a bottle of water down, even though it's inconsequential, right? What does anything have to do with a bottle of water? But you're putting something down. So an 80-year-old, it also may be, and April, you can jump in and respond. It may be I've become 80 years old, but I've realized I have not made anything out of my life. Right?
Yeah. I mean, that could be, there are many studies that have been done on life satisfaction, and that people who do not feel that they contributed or that they accomplished goals or they do not have close relationships, they are quite miserable in their later years. That is
Right.
very true.
Mhm.
But there was something you said that made me think, you know, like the complaining about the water bottle and then the ego.
It's deriving a sense of superiority out of it.
Yeah. Well, in martyrism too, of, you know, how they've been a victim and how everything is unjust and they've been unjustly treated because the government gives everybody food stamps. We are all victims, right? I mean, that kind of thing, you know. So it's a victim, you know, mentality as well, which Eckhart does talk about a lot. You know, we take on that victim role, so we are justified in our complaining. Yeah, I think all of this applies. And but if you take everything that we're saying and you just understand, like, this is where they're coming from, then like Ken is saying, you should not
Compassion.
take it personally, right? And the way to not take things personally is to have compassion, to practice unconditional love. Oh yes, I know, Dad. Oh yes, the government's horrible. That, yeah. Right. You know,
Yes.
and there could be a moment where you're like, you know, it's okay. But with them, no, it's not okay. You know, we've been so wronged, that kind of thing. You have to practice acceptance.
And they don't see it as a, like somebody may be getting food stamps. So the way I look at anything that I pay out, right? Like if I give somewhere or buy something, or whatever it may be, like even if I go buy like a box of crackers, right? I just feel like because I'm buying, and right now Patricia and I are buying high quality food, right? We are buying organic, everything has to be non-GMO, organic, like we are label reading everything, right? It shouldn't have vinegar, it shouldn't, so it's like very high quality, like only very high quality stuff does not have all the preservatives and everything, right? So I always feel, yeah, I'm paying more, but then I'm taking care of whatever that company is and whoever they're paying, the jobs that are being paid out of it, right? Like I went to Bed Bath and Beyond, and this person was saying, hey, if you sign up for this, you'll get 20% off. And I was like, no, it's okay. Just charge me for it. And it anyway goes towards your paycheck, right? It pays your paycheck eventually. If I pay more, you'll get paid. The reason why I say that is it's in the reverse. If my company gets paid more, then I get a paycheck. Right? And I always feel if I give, I will always get 100-fold back or 1,000-fold back. If I give selflessly, I'll get 1,000-fold back. So if he complained that, oh, this food stamps thing, whatever the government is doing or whatever anybody is doing, right? Instead of saying, okay, we are taking care of a segment of our society, right? We are one and we are taking care of a segment of a society. Instead of seeing it that way, if we complain, then we are actually cutting ourselves off from that segment of society.
Yeah, that takes a higher level of consciousness. And to me, I mean, I'm not aggravated, but it is, and for lack of better words, it's one of the most aggravating things to me. Your taxes are the same whether one person's on food stamps or 5,000. They're the same, right? But as humans, as humanity, there is actually more than enough to go around.
Mm-hmm.
If we would have that mentality, but these people who are elderly, they don't come from that mentality. They come from, we need to hoard everything. Like, I remember the story I told you guys, my mom used to wash her baggies,
Mm-hmm.
baggies, Ziploc baggies. They were all stuck around everything, just drying. And we had all these baggies. I was like, Mother, please, can we just buy a new box of baggies? But I mean, because that's the mentality. Like, I have to save and I have to hoard, and we have to keep, what's mine. And I was just watching on Gaia before it came on here. And I don't remember the lady's name, but I thought that's a really good statement, to use. I'm probably going to steal it. She said, whenever she pays for something or has to buy something, she reminds herself every time, like, so the money goes out and she says, there's more of that where it came from. There's much more.
Mm-hmm.
There's no lack,
Mm-hmm.
which is a very good way of thinking about it. When I took the Reiki, energy healing, the Reiki master said, everything is an energy exchange. And when you get money, you say thank you. When you give money, you ask for it to bless the person that you're giving it to,
Mm-hmm.
whoever that is. If it's a store, then the store's paying the workers, and then the workers are buying food for their table. Even if it's a business, you're paying for your consumers. Well, there's still workers there, right? So it is going down the line somewhere. But it's a completely different mentality that these elderly people don't necessarily have. And it's one that you have to work on cultivating, because we're so trained to think mine, and I have to hoard, and I have to watch it, and I have to save, and I have to, scrounge, and yeah. So
Beautiful.
Yep.
Incredible. Thank you so much, Ken and April.
Yeah, I just would like to say, I feel like a lot of the fears are getting played out. They're not really talking about what's really on their mind. And a lot of times, like what April was saying about the baggies, that could have been a trauma or something else that had happened at a younger age. So something else kicks in. And I feel like, I know for myself, I'm playing out lots of different things that both my mother and father played out. And it's something where if I don't get to the feeling of it, I'm going to keep playing it out. And if I get upset, or if I get angry, or if I stop mentioning somebody's name, it's almost like a diversion to what the core issue is. And I knew when my mother was getting older, it was like she was slipping in so many ways what she was saying. Sometimes she'd be talking to me, think she was talking to another brother. And I went, "Oh, really, Ma?" And she went, who are you? Who am I talking to? And I'm like, oh. So I started realizing how other family members were taking things. And then I started putting things together. If I hadn't been doing my inner work on seeing the patterns and whatnot, I'm putting like a puzzle together that I thought she was saying one thing, but all along she was really irritated at something and how it was coming out. So it's amazing. It's amazing. So the dementia, I think it's the same thing where it's like she has to wear a diaper because she can't hold in things. And I think emotionally the same thing happens. We're not controlling many things, or we're not clear in our thinking. So it's a really good topic, and this is helping me to see things much clearer than what things really are. So anyway, thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you, Ken. And Louise said hoarding is tied to trauma when someone was young and carries through childhood. And then I'll read some more. Hughes says, instead of reacting, let the trigger push you to analyzing the behavior. That's true. And then Louise and another said, in my opinion, there is no judging. My 3 children have been labeled by doctors, but I don't treat them as they have been labeled. And it's made a world of difference. With my parents, the same. I just went with choosing love in every situation and brings peace. That's true. That's the ADD, ADHD when I said that. When April was talking about the baggies, thank you so much, Ken, for what you've shed light on. I got reminded, I forgot the first few times that you mentioned the baggies, April. In India, we did not have Ziploc bags, but we used to receive milk in plastic bags. So my mom used to like cut it very carefully, and then we had to wash those bags and save, like if he wanted to save fruits and vegetables in the fridge, in those plastic bags. And so they were exactly like you were saying, with the laundry clips, right? In India, you put the laundry outside in the sun to dry. So with the laundry clips, everywhere they're like baggies drying. I remember doing that. I remember doing that. But that's a very scarcity kind of mentality, right?
Oh, absolutely. And that came from, one, my mother came from a very extremely poor household. And then my grandparents, well, my grandpa this year is turning 90. And not only that, but they're German immigrants. One side is Native American, one side's German. So we're talking, very poverty where you had to literally save everything or reuse everything. But it is, so if we want to take this, I mean, this is a little bit off topic from the question, but that scarcity mentality actually blocks you from receiving.
Perfect.
Yes.
Right. So it doesn't necessarily match the question. However, when you are always thinking, I have to save and I have to hoard and I have to scrounge and I have to be careful that I don't lose and I don't lose and I might be without that. Boy, you're certainly not in the frequency of receiving. So then you will get what you expect, right? What you believe. So this goes even farther into that. At some point, my mother learned to stop washing the baggies. So that was great.
She realized she could always buy new baggies at a dollar store or something that would be cheap enough.
Yeah, well, I think it was also like a mental shift in her. And I remember doing this with myself at one point. So when my first marriage, I was extremely, extremely poor the whole entire time. And, people would give me things because I was so poor, and they would give me things that perhaps I didn't necessarily need. But my mindset was, I won't have money to buy it, so I'll just put it away. And I remember there was like these ducks, you know, I don't know if you guys know the ducks with like the little bonnets. Have you ever seen the ducks with little bonnets on them? They were like these two plastic figures and they were like little ducks. I did not want those. But my mind said, well, you won't ever be able to afford buying them. And you may want a decoration choice. So you should keep those.
So
That's
you
a
were
scary.
hoarding, but yeah,
Yeah,
you were hoarding.
I mean, I was never really bad at it as the hoarders, but yeah, it was still a hoarding type, and it was a scarcity mentality that I was so poor I would never be able to buy these plastic little ducks that I didn't want. So it's the same kind of thing, you know, where you're holding on to all of this because I didn't have any idea that I would expect or get more in the future. So with my mom, what I think was it was a mentality switch because I remember her saying to me one day, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm done doing that. So I think her mind switched to like, you know what? I deserve more.
Fantastic.
I deserve more. I deserve to go buy a new box of baggies.
And what I realized, like all throughout my her life, my mom never made, like she was always there was enough, but there was never in excess, right? But I think it comes from the scarcity mentality. Good evening, Christina. Buenas noches. Patricia, you want to talk about this topic? Thank you, April and Ken.
Buenas noches. Gracias.
Gracias.
Well, let me try my Spanish. Buenas noches, Cristina. Buenas noches.
Buenas noches, Patricia. Buenas noches, Abril, Ken, Poma. ¡Qué alegría! Beautiful.
What a subject. Yeah, you kind of want to think that you're doing the right thing, right? To taking care of your elderly parents in a society that people are just thought of like, okay, you're old, you can't do anything, let's put you in a home, let others take care of you, and we'll just send a check. So there's that component to it, you know, that I understand that the person is really doing it out of not necessarily completely guilt, but also, you know, love too, maybe. There is some, but obviously to the extent the exhaustion is not helping because they cannot be there fully. They cannot bring joy and love if they're exhausted, emotionally especially. Physically, you know, you can always rest, but emotionally it's tough to rest because even if you're sitting, your head is just going and going. But I think that awareness, it is presence, awareness in a sense, okay, I'm feeling exhausted emotionally and physically, and my parents complaining, how do I stay present? But that realization is being present in that moment, you know, accepting this is what it is, and you know, how to, I think the question was like how to make it better, but the presence is already there in this question for me, because for people, whoever will is not, if you're not aware, you would just go with it. You would just like exhausted and complaining yourself and like, that's my life. I have a friend like that, and it's about her family. It's not, you know, she has the elderly mother that it's a cat person, little crazy, so she takes care of her. She has 2 sons that have some physical like issues with food, with gluten and intolerance and all sorts of stuff from all the way I remember. You know, her husband also had some like heart issues, some heart attacks and whatever. And it seems like it's everything on her. She never has time for herself. And I suggest certain things and, oh, but it's just my life. It's just, I'm exhausted. I'm just exhausted. I keep, catching up. And so she is sacrificing her life. I mean, she has a husband who's perfectly capable of doing stuff, 2 sons that are adults practically, and she still is doing everything and taking care of dogs. And I mean, so it's just, I guess, the identity that you're living. You being present, it's maybe stepping outside of it and observing it. It's like, is that the programming? Do I choose it? Or I'm enslaved into it? Because if you're enslaved to it, you're gonna resent it. There's not gonna be love in there. So, and I experienced it. I mean, I didn't have the situation that I was taking care of an elderly parent, but even when I called my mom every day, I told her today, I just want to see you. But she was trying to cut me. It's like, okay, just go to work, go back to work. It's like, I have nothing to tell you. I said, Mom, you don't have to tell me anything. I'm just sitting with you. I'm eating my lunch. You just sit there and I'm just enjoying your company. She almost just got like, she couldn't sit. She couldn't sit stillness because she felt like she needed to tell me something. Like, if there's nothing to talk about, what's there? So, and her head was trying to get to places to complain about my father, about something negative. And I almost like conditioned her. It's like, no, I don't want to hear it. Also, there's nothing else to talk about. Like, what was nice today? Find something that actually brought you joy. So she would say one thing, and then again, her mind would go towards the other stuff. It's like back and forth, but she is one of my biggest teachers, because she shows me that she tries, to be there for me. Like, if I need to just sit with her, but then I see how her patterns are running her. And I just, staying present in those moments is just, for me, I feel my breath. And sometimes I don't, even though if I feel it and I still go, it's like something that she says pulls me out. And for a minute, I yell at her for something. Like, I told you not to say that. Like, I lose my patience. So then I have to get back to the breath. And it's becoming easier and easier, but she, allows me to practice. And I try not to share with her, just really do it to myself. And makes a difference, because I see that she comes down and she stops herself too. So yeah, I think that just maybe breathing in that moment and admitting even to yourself that my body is exhausted, and just like, what would, like, asking yourself, maybe just going to sleep. All right, so what would you do different tomorrow? What would you do different tomorrow? That's what's happening. The pattern, what is it? The pattern interruption. That's what Ken says. Say something different. Don't just go with it. Just say something different. And maybe it didn't take the first time, it didn't take the second time, but maybe after a while, because you're consistent with it, they will stop complaining. Or maybe they won't, but it won't bother you as much. I think it's there because you're feeding it. It really annoys you. It exhausts you. You notice it. So it's almost like what you resist, right? Persist in a sense. So energetically, you might be co-creating it by noticing it so much. I don't know, rather than that. I wish I was more helpful, but I think Ken and April did an incredible job. by explaining where the conditioning is coming from, and the having compassion towards it and not taking it personally is huge, because that will allow you to get that stillness, the presence, and out of the presence will come love and understanding, and maybe love to yourself, so you'll figure way out like that you can spend more time for yourself and start having your life. So for the moments when you're back taking care of your parents, you'll be more there for them. So the quality of the care on the emotional level will be much, much better. Because we're not our bodies, right, guys? We're not our bodies. We are, energy fields. So if we can get there from the energy, they will meet us there. Or if they don't, it won't bother us as much. I actually have a question to April regarding that question.
Before
What
you
about
start,
the
before you start,
self-contract?
before
Mhm.
you start, thank you so much for sharing. I want to bring up what Summer said, so that April can answer both the things. Summer said, isn't it also saving the environment to reuse plastic? So go ahead, Patricia. Thank you.
Believe me, they're not doing it to reuse plastic.
Yeah, no, they're not.
That was not, because I reuse plastic, but or put it in recycle, but it's not to save it or whatever. Glass, yes, I keep the glass because glass stays. Plastic is not good to reuse. It's not healthy. The question about this, when we're starting talking about the first sales contract, how this situation plays to the sales contract. So let's say there are older elderly parents. You need to take care of them. What is the sales contract here? Are the parents there to keep teaching you the lesson that you need to finally find your life or figure this out? Or what is the contract here, would you say?
So the contract for this one, most likely the lesson is this lessons are the same for almost all of us. They're almost identical for all of us. Ultimately, the lesson is to love ourselves and everyone else unconditionally, to not have expectations and attachments, to practice acceptance. Like genuinely, the soul contracts are genuinely geared towards the same path. For this situation, most likely the contract, the lesson that was meant to be learned should have already been learned.
Mm.
Right. And there were probably opportunities in this person's lives and most of our lives that presented to learn this lesson of non-attachment, of acceptance, of self-care, of, hey, I'm important, of not sacrificing myself. So most likely this person had those events come up, and either they were not able to see the lesson or recognize the lesson, or it wasn't fully learned to the level that your soul said, I want to learn it to this level. I want to learn this much about it in this lifetime. So again, you can try to empathize with the situation, but until you actually go through that situation, you don't actually know. You really don't know.
But is it ever
What
too
I-
late?
What
To
I
learn the
feel,
lesson?
what I feel is actually both sides are not expanding at all, April. Because
Well,
the parents are 80 years old and stuck in their complaining. So the consciousness is not expanding. So they're not meeting their soul contract. The same thing with the child, because they are stuck and they're saying, I'm emotionally and physically until they say, okay, I'm going to take 2 hours a day and spend in living in presence. That's the other insight I had is,
Yeah.
if we are not present, what kind of care are we giving our 80-year-old child, 80-year-old parents? We're bringing the same irritation, the same anger, the same complaining to them.
Yeah, that's
We're-
what Patricia mentioned, yeah.
Right?
Yeah, well, I think though, I mean, you kind of have to look at this from two ways. So the fact that the parents grew up in that era, so they would therefore have these beliefs, and then they would behave this way towards the end of their life. And then this person would be the caretaker, is actually a perfect design for awakening. If you look at it in that way, right? This is the perfect opportunity for this person
To not
to
do
wake-
what their parents did.
to create awakening, to create enlightenment, to create presence. This is a perfect scenario. This is a perfect movie scene.
Mhm.
It's an opportunity. So I do think that this person, because they're on our page, they are awakening, they are expanding. And this is the perfect setup. This is a perfect school. It might not be the, Ivy League. We might be down underneath the community college, but this is the perfect setup. So it would all be part of the soul contract, that if I do not learn these lessons and I do not achieve this goal of self-love and being in the present moment, then in the end, you know what? We're going to be your parents and we are going to be so grumpy. We're going to drive you insane. We are going to drive you insane.
You have no
Perfect.
choice. but
So
to
if by the time I'm 60 down there and I'm not figuring it out fully, you guys just be the worst, like 2-year-olds in diapers. Okay, let's do it.
Oh, yeah,
So
that's
this contract continues, it's continuous, right? So there's the human level. I think that these people were grown up in a certain era. They're in their beliefs, their patterns. But on the soul level, this is actually working out perfectly. Now, the elderly people their soul may not have contracted to necessarily expand in this lifetime. So they're not going to, but playing their soul role, they're playing it perfectly for the other soul to expand, if the opportunity is taken. Am I making sense?
Mhm.
Okay.
Until they realize, what does that say? That I was afraid to live my own life and afraid to let them live theirs. And so in giving up my life, I gained the life I wanted. They have to come to the realization
Well, and
the
she
giving-
can, or I keep saying she, but she can let them be miserable and still live her life.
exactly. Not give
They
up her
can-
life. That's what her expansion needs to be. That,
Yeah.
okay, I'm done with them. I've taken care of them. They're 80 years old. I'm going to give them to some kind of assisted living care or somewhere, make another
Well, and-
arrangement, right?
yeah, even if they didn't do that, just learning, like Ken said, I mean, I used to mess with my mother. She literally would come in and create so much chaos, and she would complain about the most ridiculous. For the love of God, I was forced to get married at 15. I've been cooking since I've been fit. She tried to come in. I'm 40 something, saying I didn't know how to cook. So I would just be like, Mom, please just get my pants out. Like, I just so didn't care. You can do that with miserable people. Right? And that's the not taking it personal. So whether they put them in a home or they just can't do that, that's fine. But just stop taking it personal
remember
and
that.
let them be in their miserable state.
I remember that part of Eckhart's one of the talks that, well, you think you're so enlightened and awakened, and go back to your parents' house for a weekend or for a holiday and
Yes,
see
yeah,
and test it.
yeah.
And this person has it every day. right? So,
Yeah. Hmm.
Well, in my case, and with what April, with what you're saying, I agree with you 100%. These are opportunities for us not to repeat. And I'm realizing about loving is I can catch myself now when I react. I'm starting to be the observer. I can be around my other family members, but when the last few years that my mother was living, actually, that's when the family separated. Because then I started to realize my mother was telling each individual different things. She knew the weaknesses. She knew how she was getting her needs met in a very not a healthy way. And she was utilizing certain people that because she wanted people to agree with her. She
Right.
wanted to be in control. And she made a muck of things. And I started to see how that, but now, and then I started realizing how much I was healing in the past 5 or 6 years, while other people were getting deeper in the black hole, I was coming out of it. So that's when I realized I need to really work on myself, and I'm still doing it. So it's amazing now, and then about the relationship stuff and everything else. And then with my mother and father, I could see how they were playing things out. And when I was alone with my mother, she'd be saying the exact same things when I was alone with my father. It was like they were just mirroring each other. So it's amazing. And then I have certain family members, certain brothers who will do the exact same thing. And then they'll talk about another brother. And that's the exact same way my mother was.
Hmm.
So it was amazing. And I got to the end where I was like, oh my God, I'm not getting triggered. I could be with her, but not really take it to heart at all. And then like I was saying, I would change the subject. And then even having certain nurses come in, certain nurses, again, watching them. And I would say, how could you be so up? And they say, believe me, we have to switch rooms to be with different people, because if we stayed in one room long enough, it would drive us nuts.
I can, what did you do when you got triggered and you observed it and you still had that yucky feeling, like either whatever, however you felt the trigger? What do you do with that?
I think
Well-
April has to leave. I just wanted to let you know.
Yeah, I have to go
Yeah.
get a dog.
Have a good evening. Much
Thank
love,
you.
April. Thank you.
Thanks.
So grateful.
Okay. Thank you, April.
As always, about
Okay.
self-conflict stuff.
I would just really have to pray more, or there'd be some days I wouldn't go see her if I knew I didn't have the tolerance. And because my mother, I had certain buttons around her, and all my brothers do. And then when I started really talking about that, so it's just something where this is part of our teaching, part of our learning. Because if I'm getting triggered, then I know I'm still carrying something deep in myself that I need to address. And now what I'm doing, Patricia, around certain people, I say thank you. I say I love you. And so what I'm doing is I'm realizing I need to fake it till I make it, and realize that this is a trigger. So I need to admit it. Because once I deny something, and then I'll be right in it. My unconsciousness will just feed it. So it's amazing how much we learn when we are awake, but it takes a lot of work, because it's not the temptation. Sometimes it's so hard not to react, or not to lean into it and do the same thing over again. So it's and I'm going through that. Well, no, I won't change the subject, but I'm going through a lot of that now, doing what I'm doing. Much different than it was in the summertime.
Work,
Yeah.
work,
So I
work.
have a
Great.
different lesson. I have a different lesson to learn.
Yeah, I found myself lately also just a little bit different subject. I actually found myself before I call my mom every time, I make almost like a promise. Okay, I'll be present, right, to see her. And then she says something, and many times I can observe myself here and there, something going on, but I maintain. But there are days that it comes like from like left field somewhere, and I just all of a sudden 5 minutes later I'm finding myself yelling about something, and she's like, "Why are you yelling?" I'm like, "Oh shoot." Just it takes me. So
Your old self comes back. So you have to be watchful. And this happens when you're tired. You've done a heavy morning. You've woken up at 4, and by the time it's 11, 12 o'clock your time, it's a long day. You've
Right.
already done 6, 7 hours of your day. So always know that the presence is dropping. Even though you may say, the ego may say, the thinking mind may say, I will be present. Presence will drop because you've been up since 4 in the morning, right?
presence requires energy, and
Presence requires a lot of energy, and the prefrontal cortex in the beginning, at some point in time, it becomes a very natural state. No matter what is going on, like Eckhart, no matter what is going on, he's like level-headed, right? I see him like the internet goes off, like he's giving a talk. In 2021, we did like School of Awakening online, and quite a few times he goes, I don't know what's happening. I cannot see any of you, but I'll go ahead and keep talking. And his face is impassive, like nothing, right? Like he cannot see anything. And he's giving a talk. Tammy Simon or whoever it is that's hosting him will say, we can still hear you, Eckhart. And he'll then continue to speak, right? But impassive, like the face, no emotion, no, oh my God, what is this computer thing? And break this thing, kind of none of that. Like,
interestingly enough, keeping calm, everything falls into place.
Right.
but
So,
that requires a great degree of a level of presence practice, and you're doing it right. The more you do the 2 hours of meditation every day, the more you ground yourself through a structured practice, it'll naturally give it. So I started this 2 hours a day in 2018. In year 2019, I did School of Awakening, and right after that, this group, I think we got like 1,000 members per week. It went from like 5,000-6,000 to 30,000 in that year. So I knew like immediately, with just a year of practice, that the presence had grown up.
that's incredible. You became a platform for everybody else because of your level of presence practice.
Right, but that is just making myself, I had just heard, and just look at the, one of the realizations I had recently is, look at my ego. In 2018, I did hear in one of my mindfulness sessions in the, where I was working, about Dr. Joe Dispenza. But I was like so attached to this thought that all I'm going to do is Eckhart Tolle's teachings, that I would not look at a book of Dr. Joe Dispenza. I would not look at a talk of Dr. Joe Dispenza. I would just do Eckhart's work, Eckhart's work, Eckhart's work, Eckhart's work, right? And then come, when did I, not 20, I think 2021, suddenly Dr. Joe's video just appeared on YouTube because I was watching Abraham Hicks and Eckhart, right? So it appeared, I listened, and then it drew me, right? Because they had talked about it then I started to know it and trust it. And that there was also a yearning that Yeah, I know Eckhart's teachings and I've applied most of it, but he doesn't have a good practice. Like he doesn't have a lesson plan or a way of like how Dr. Joe has his meditations, right?
Mhm.
Each meditation sits on top of the other. Blessings at the Energy Center 1 to 2 to 3. So the teachings are supported with meditation, like a presence
He's a
practice.
doctor.
Yes.
I really enjoyed when he explained why he explains things.
Mhm.
Because what we have a brain. So once we understand the process, we actually benefit from it much more than just, being and
Right.
doubting and questioning, because minds love that. But once you're laying it out, that's the best, the most beneficial.
So now that you bring that up, Patricia, I wanted to tell you is when you're the new you could choose not to talk to your mother every day. The new you could say, I'm just repeating the same that's what he says. If you wake up and do the same thing, look at the same WhatsApp, go into work at 11:30, you're calling your mother. Day number 2, look at your WhatsApp, do your work, and then at 11:30 or 12, you're calling your mother. Day number 3, WhatsApp.
Right.
You're doing
We
your work.
repeat
That was something different I did. A year ago, I wasn't doing that. I was only calling her on the weekends.
Okay, so why did you start calling her every day?
So when my Aunt Ella passed,
Right.
because I realized that I was on unemployment in between, so I was able to speak with them, with my aunt and my mother every day
Okay.
for those few months. And
Okay.
they kept me sane because I was alone. I was, losing my mind, blah, blah, blah. I did have my practice. I did have my coaching, but I needed some emotional, like,
Okay.
I don't know.
So
hug.
they provided you with support at that time.
So, and then my aunt, passed right after I got my job, and she was gone like within a couple of months. And in my heart, I felt like I spent the last times with her. I didn't know that she would be gone. I just enjoy being with her. So I said, oh my gosh, my mom is
But
right
just see how your ego is building another story to keep itself alive, to keep itself into an activity. So this is what your mother is doing, and then you're doing to yourself as well. Your mother wants to talk about her. I want you to look at her patterns too. That her pattern is to think about your dad and whatever's going on with your dad, to complain about it, get into a victim story over and over again. So you can bring that awareness to her. Say, Mom, can you see that this is like a victim story? That you always bring up my dad? Just enjoy him, or if you don't enjoy him, just do what you need to do for him, right? I mean, your choices, you can leave, but you don't have the option to leave because you don't know how to take care of yourself. So you're dependent on his finances. Financially, you're dependent on him, so you cannot leave. So for that, there's a trade-off, right? You're trading, like they say, right? You're selling your soul to the devil. You're selling the soul to the devil. So just be aware of that. There's no victim in it. You're selling the soul to the devil. But get yourself into some kind of Mom, can you do some things that keeps you present instead of getting into this victim story? Explain that to her, but you don't have to see her every day, because you're then repeating that pattern, and then she is teaching you your old patterns back. So I gave you that blog that Dr. Joe wrote recently, right? He wrote about how. So somebody, you can actually subscribe. I would strongly recommend that people subscribe to Dr. Joe's website, which is a $10. It's called Dr. Joe Live. It's $10 a month or something. He does a Q&A, and you have access. Once you sign up, you have access to his Q&As from year 2020 all the way back to 2020. So you can listen to all of them, just like if Eckhart's website, you buy his website membership, it is $20 a month, you get access to all his videos, right? So last month, somebody, a professional actor, asked, if I'm acting all that pain, I'm acting all this thing, how do I actually behave this new way? And Dr. Joe in this blog said that you behave, you believe, you behave, you become. Just like a professional actor, you believe that there's a new you, that no longer is going to get irritated with the mother, that no longer is going to get frustrated that she's going to say a victim story, because you know that's her story, right? Then even if she says the story, even if she says the story, just let it pass through you. You are eating, you enjoy your meal, whatever you're eating in your apple or your potatoes, just let it pass through and enjoy your meal. And then you believe. The moment you do not feel the irritation towards her story is the day she stops her story. But the key to it is don't talk to her every day. You don't need to. You can talk to her on the weekend. You can talk to her once in a while. Make a trip to Poland and be with her is much more important. Plan that out, right? At some point in time, plan that out. That's the new you. The new you can go to Poland, right? So, but what I would say is I withdrew from everybody. Like I don't go out chitter chatter with the people in, happy hour, or somebody says, come for a happy hour here. No, I don't have, I would much rather be with all of you. Friday evenings for me, I give up for you. Like if somebody on Friday in the evening, somebody says, I'm not available. I'm not available. Y'all are more important to me. This family is more important to me. This love that Michelle, you, Louise, Ken, everybody gives to me is much more important to me than going to a happy hour and chitter-chattering about what the government is doing, just like what April was saying, right? What the government is doing, or what's going on with stands, food stands, or whatever.
We feel it. I mean, I feel it and I love it. I'm just like being pulled into it because it's like so selfless and unconditioned and just incredible. That's the quality of love. Yes.
So just try to be the new you. So believe, behave, become. Like a professional actor, you're always going to act like the new you. You will make yourself act as the new you. The new you no longer gets frustrated with your mother, however her sad story is, right? Her sad story about your brother, her sad story with your father, her sad story with whatever. If she makes a bad soup, let her make the bad soup. Let her enjoy the bad soup. You're not there to enjoy it, right? Nobody's forcing you to enjoy that bad soup. So why do you care? Let that person be happy. If they're drinking alcohol, let them drink alcohol. If they're drinking whatever, apple cider vinegar, let them have apple cider vinegar. It's okay.
Yep. But somebody told me once, Patricia, I'm an adult and I have car keys and I know how to use them. And and it's something where my parents don't own me and I'm not responsible for them. And as an adult, they're not responsible for me either. And so it was really easy for me to say no. And to realize that I can do what I want to do. And then a lot of the holidays and different things, there was a time I would go to Disney World or I'd go on a vacation during a holiday. And then they would say, why do you do that? And I would say, because I want to. And sometimes it would irritate them. And I would realize that's their irritation. So in a sense, they need a fix. Just like somebody who drinks alcohol or somebody who's an overeater or anything else, they go to something to soothe them. And then when I learned about codependence, I realized that the person wants to control, wants to manipulate. But if I fall into those gaps, I will do what they want me to do. I become the people pleaser. Well, I don't want them to be unhappy. I don't want to be the cause of this. And I'm not. I had to change my belief system, my thinking, the way I talked. And then how I do that, it's just like Poonam just said. My relationship came to an end when I started seeing this group. She didn't like it, but I started putting myself first. And I realized this is important to me, but what I would do is I was a people pleaser in relationships, especially when I was in a romantic one, because I thought that's what I'm supposed to do. And now I realize, no, I'm not. So I'm learning to break those patterns. It's really uncomfortable because I want to go back to what's familiar, but I know it doesn't work for me. So that there is the pain or the uncomfortableness I need to break through. And tonight, I really needed you guys tonight. I needed the group tonight because in a sense, I needed to be held and it makes me feel good. Just like Poonam said, I much rather be with my spiritual group than other people. And I'm the exact same way. This is my choice. And I'm realizing that I got to do it long enough to break the pattern. Because at times, some days are easier than others. And some days that tug or that pull wants to bring me back. And I go, no, I'm not gonna dive into the temptation. I'm not gonna let it take hold. If I do, I'll slip and I'll go right back into what doesn't work. So it's just really being aware of how I may slip. I'll go back and forth.
But Dr. Joe was right. Like once you get through the meditations and you get even a taste of this incredible bliss, you want more of it. You just like, you can't wait to sit for meditation again.
Yes.
And if I slip right now, I feel so bad. It's like, it's worse because it's like, I don't want it anymore. It's like,
right. And then that's where we need to be gentle with ourselves because we may slip a little bit or whatever. And I'm learning that's where the self-love comes in. I never knew what self-love was a few years ago. It was really kind of foreign to me because I was so used to giving to others in an unhealthy way. And I needed to understand and see that. And now I'm really.
Yeah, for me, the big aha moment was when I heard someone that you have to just get out of your way. I'm like, what do you mean get out of my way? Because you are love, right? You just obstructing your ego, you're obstructing yourself from being who you are. That concept was like, what?
Right.
But the finding out that I don't have to do anything to deserve and to be worthy of love because I am already it. I just need to get to the awareness of it.
Exactly. And I needed to see the patterns. And then and that's a lot of that is the shadow side. And there's certain parts of me that I didn't like. And those are the parts that I needed to love myself. So the shadow side of others. Now, if I have a shadow side that others have the shadow side, it's going to be much harder for me to detect. But if I know I'm really annoyed with somebody, I really know I'm annoyed with myself. So I'm starting to really see that. I'm saying I need to love myself because where am I doing that I'm not seeing? And then I start paying attention to how I'm maybe criticizing or judging somebody. And then I realize, oh my God, I'm doing that to myself. More and more I'm seeing those, but I have to stick to it. I got to really stick to my plan and my practice and my goals. And it's like at one time, I thought I was strong enough. I wouldn't need a group. No, I need you. I need Poonam. I need everybody here. And it's like that's my spiritual family. I never had a spiritual family with my family of origin. I'm closer to everybody here than I've anybody in my family of origin. And I'm really starting to feel it.
It's
It's yummy.
incredible. Thank you, Poonam, for creating this.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Ken. On that note, we'll end the session
you.
because it's getting late for Patricia
All
and
right.
supposedly for you, Ken. Many
All righty.
blessings, eternally
Thank you so much.
grateful for
Thank
this
you.
Same
Thank you,
here.
everyone.
Good night.
being together. Have a good night. Bye. Thank you.
Bye.